just wanted to start off by thanking you all for joining me today as I present this presentation to you. My name is Ashley Farr, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about essay items. As teachers, some of us use essay items quite often in our classrooms to assess our students. We may think that our essay items are good or even great, but are they really? Do our essay items assess what we really need them to? Are we able to score these items easily and correctly? Those are a few important questions that you should ask yourself right now as we go through this presentation. I'm going to show you some guidelines to help you in creating an essay item and scoring an essay item. I will also show you a few good and bad examples of essay items that you could possibly use in your classroom. Before we get into this, I feel that it is very important that we know exactly what an essay item is. An essay item is a constructed response or a written response. Anytime a student is asked to write a paragraph, a short answer, or even an essay, that is going to be an essay item. Essay items allow the students to demonstrate their abilities in synthesizing, evaluating, and composing. They are also used to see what the students know about the content on their own. However, creating an essay item can be very hard. When creating an essay item, there are 5 guidelines that you should follow to be sure that your essay item is reliable. The first guideline is to convey to the students a clear idea regarding the extensiveness of the response desired, which means that you should let the students know how long you want their response to be. You should let them know if it is a restricted response item, which limits the student's answer to be short, or if it is an extended response item, which allows the students to elaborate and have a longer answer. However, either way, you should clear that with the students and make sure that they know what you want from them. The second guideline is to construct items so the student's task is explicitly described, which means that you should clearly explain to the students the assessment task at hand that you are wanting them to construct an answer for. The third guideline is to provide students with an approximate time to be expended on each item as well as each item's value, which means that you should set a time limit for the students for each item, letting them know how long is expected of them to spend on that question. You should also let the students know how many points each item is worth. So show them the value so that they know, okay, well this is really important, but this one's not, so I should spend more time on this one. The fourth guideline is do not employ optional items, meaning that the teachers should not allow the students to choose what they want to answer and what they don't. For example, a teacher should not list 5 essay items on the test and only have the students choose 3 of those to answer. It makes it hard to score in the end, and it also gives the students the opportunity to skip out on something that they really don't know. The fifth and final guideline for creating an essay item is to precursively judge an item's quality by composing mentally or in writing a possible response, which means that the teacher should place herself in the student's shoes and construct a response herself to answer the item before giving the item to the students. If you follow those guidelines when constructing an essay item, it will help you tremendously. Now for scoring an essay item. Scoring an essay item can also be very hard, even if you do follow the guidelines for constructing that item. However, lucky for us teachers, there are also a few guidelines that we can follow when scoring an item to make the job a little bit easier. These guidelines consist of, number 1, score responses holistically and/or analytically. Therefore, the very first thing you should do is choose the approach of which you will use to score the items, whether it be a holistic approach where you focus on the response as a whole, or an analytical approach where you analyze and score each specific point. Either way, you should know that in the beginning before you even begin to score the essay items. The second guideline is prepare a tentative scoring key in advance of judging students' responses. In other words, you should have a rubric prepared ahead of time based on your approach that you will use to grade each student's response. The third guideline for scoring an essay item is to make decisions regarding the importance of the mechanics of writing prior to scoring, which means that you should decide before you start grading whether or not things like spelling, punctuation, and capitalization are going to be important to you when grading these responses. If you know what the task at hand is and base it off of that, then you will easily be able to decide whether or not those mechanics are important for that essay item. The fourth guideline is to score all responses to one item before scoring responses to the next item. This means that if you have several essay items on a test, then you should score number 1 for every student, then number 2 for every student, and then number 3, and so on. You should not score number 1, 2, and 3 for the first student and then move on and do the same for the next student. Because scoring your essay items will be inconsistent for each student, and that could cause a problem when the students get their grades back. Number 5, the fifth and final guideline for scoring an essay item is, insofar as possible, evaluate the responses anonymously, which means exactly what it says. You should score the responses anonymously, or at least try not to know whose response you're scoring. As teachers, we begin to recognize those things, and that can cause an inconsistency in the scoring. Now that we have covered the guidelines for creating and scoring an essay item, I'm going to show you a few examples of well-constructed and badly constructed essay items. The first one that I'll show you is these two. Compare the setting, characters, and main idea from the writings of Amy Ford and John Doe versus compare the setting, characters, and main idea from the writings of Amy Ford and John Doe in 10 to 15 minutes. In this example, we can clearly see that they are the exact same question. However, the second one would be correct because it gives the students a time limit and lets them know how long is expected of them to spend on that essay item. This next one, the first one, says describe the main events leading up to the Civil War in 10 to 20 minutes versus identify 3 main events that influenced the Civil War. Briefly describe the importance of each main event and how they influenced the Civil War in 10 to 15 minutes, which is worth 10 points. As we discussed in the last slide, they both have a time limit. However, in this slide we are noticing that the first item is very vague. The second item is very well described and gives the students a time limit as well as the value, letting them know that this question is kind of important because it's worth 10 points. Here, the second item would be the better item to use as an assessment question. Now that is all I have for you, and I've shown you the guidelines and a few examples. If you have any questions now, you can feel free to ask. If there are no questions, then we will end it for today. I want to thank you all again for being here and listening to this presentation. I assure you all that if you just follow these guidelines for constructing and scoring essay items, then it will make using essay items to assess your students in the classroom more accurate and reliable. Thank you all again and have a great afternoon.